Okay, this chapter 14 is the first chapter of our new unit about the Enlightenment. This first chapter is about the pursuit of power. We'll talk about absolutism. And that's pretty much what we're going to focus on. We'll talk about a series of wars as well in the second half that will have effects in North America as well. And so that's kind of why we want to talk about them, is just kind of give you a little preview of U.S. history. But the first half of this chapter is probably the more important one, the one I want you guys to focus on more for your unit exam. Okay, your objective for this section is to contrast the rise of absolutism in Europe with its demise in England. Why do you have absolutist monarchs in most of Europe, but not in England? And that's kind of the question you're going to be answering in this section. Okay, take a look at this piece of scripture, Romans 13, 1 through 4. Pretty much, a lot of these absolutist monarchs are going to use this, they're almost going to misinterpret it in a way as justification for their power being absolute, or that would be another way of saying complete or total power, that they don't share that power with anyone. Everyone has to answer to the king because they say the king or the king God ordained them and put them in power, so everyone should respect that power that way. And yes, we should respect the powers that be because they are ordained of God, but that doesn't mean that if the powers that be are doing something evil or are or that our voices shouldn't be heard, that our kings shouldn't take into account what the people have to say. Okay, so why is this able to happen? Well, a part of it is because the Pope is not as powerful as he once had been. So royal authority is going to increase because the kings don't have to fight with the Pope for power. Also, feudalism is going away. Remember feudalism and the manor and serfs? People are now moving off the manors. They're not under the direct rule of a lord because they're moving to the different towns. And if you're in a town, really you're going to be more accountable to the king instead of the lord that was your ruler on the manor. Okay. European rulers work towards having absolute power, and the way that they did this was they were going to increase quite a few things, and you want to make sure that you have these in your notes. They were going to increase the control over their nation's finances, so their money, over their nation's religion, over the nation's nobility. They were going to increase the size of their army and navy. They were going to increase the size of the government bureaucracy and increase the size of their territory. So what they use, like that verse we just looked at from Romans, to justify the extension, and that's what EXT here is abbreviating, of their powers, is the divine right of kings. That the king is only responsible to God. He's not responsible to the people. Not like when we looked at the Magna Carta that said the king was to be held accountable to the law. In an absolutist monarchy, the king doesn't have to do that. He's only responsible to God. He can change the law. So representative assemblies, like we would see in England, and this is a part of why England isn't absolutist, by the way, like Parliament, in other places like France, when you have a representative assembly like the Estates General, they're not going to be able to restrain the king's power. The king's going to be able to do whatever he wants. One of the Louis in France actually says that it's pretty much his right to seek advice from the representative assemblies, but he really doesn't have to follow that advice, and he can seek it whenever he wants to or not at all. Okay, so here you have some advisors to some of these kings, and so we're going to talk about how you see the growth of absolutism through the leadership of these advisors to the king. Henry IV, I don't really care if you guys, you don't need to memorize Henry IV. He lays the foundation for absolutism. He's a Bourbon king. You guys probably don't know what that means, and it's fine. Don't worry about it. I do want to focus on the different Louis, though, that you're going to see. And if you're having a hard time with the Roman numerals, we will go over that again in class. Okay, so let's go to Louis the 13th. Remember, X is 10, and then you have the 3, so it means 13. He becomes king when he is 9 years old. So really, he's not in a position to actually rule the country of France. So that leadership falls to his advisor, Cardinal Richelieu. Richelieu has a few goals. His first goal, and he's a Catholic cardinal, he wants to destroy the Protestant Huguenots. So those are the French Protestants, the Huguenots. And so he's going to do this in a few different ways. He's going to want to convert them back to Catholicism. A lot of Huguenots will leave. They're persecuted throughout France. He also wants to weaken the nobility because he pretty much thinks, if the nobility has too much power, they can go up against the king. They can try to get rid of the young king and put someone else on the throne. So he wants to find a different tactics to weaken them. So one would be, instead of having the nobility directly involved in government, they will hire people that are directly, they have to directly report back to the king. And these are called intendants. The intendants have different government positions, but they are not nobility, so they can't make a claim to the throne while they're working in government. That's not something the king would have to worry about. And then